After the battle, Anne and Goku destroyed the time machine and took a boat to Australia. They changed their names and lived new lives ready to start over. The two young people looked into each other's eyes as they kissed, as the Reverend pronounced them man and wife. Finally, it seemed Anne was at peace, and they would always be together until the end of time. Alright, that's the end of the story. I know that there are a ton of problems with this, but I'm going to start with the small things and work my way up. I think that'll be a little easier. So since the fic gets more ridiculous as it goes on, I'm going to start at the beginning. So the first problem I notice in this fic is that the whole first chapter has no indentions. It is like a giant wall of text. And it doesn't even like... I have this actually copied and pasted into a Word document because on the website it's like white text over an anime background that's like really distracting. So, but it's like she doesn't take up like this huge column on the right side in the whole first chapter. And it's just this giant block of nothing but words. And she uses no indentions. And she doesn't, you know, obviously if she's not using indentions, she doesn't start new paragraphs when she has someone else talking or when she changes the subject. I'm assuming this author is a girl, by the way, just because most fanfiction writers statistically are girls. But please ignore me, author, if you're listening to this and you're a guy. Anyway, so another problem here is that this is a very stereotypical romance story at the beginning. It's like you have this girl who's like upset with her life. She meets this random guy and it's like she instantly falls in love with him. I mean, they barely talk and suddenly she's kissing him and he's like, "Oh, I'm married." And then he's like, "Alright, I have to leave." So he leaves, and Anne's really upset about it, apparently. Alright, then that is where the first chapter ends. Move on to the second chapter. They have some indentions this time. Well, not really indentions, but more paragraph spacing. So that's a little better, but she still doesn't follow the rules and, you know, actually make a new paragraph every time someone speaks. There are paragraphs where, like, more than one person speaks in the same paragraph as someone else. But I'm ignoring that for now. There's a lot more that could be improved in this fic. I'd rather have a good plot than, you know, correct paragraph spacing. So let's move on. So, in chapter 2, the problems begin when Anne is, you know, captured by these Nazis. The fact is that this really happened in history, and it's very unfortunate to me that someone felt the need to, like, totally deconstruct something horrible that really happened. I mean, it's like, they're writing this scene, and it's pretty much, if they made another Anne Frank movie, I know there are a couple already, but if they made an Anne Frank movie where they played out this scene completely, and they're, like, you know, taking her outside, like, and they're planning to take her to the camps, I mean, it would be very, very sad. It would be a horrible scene, because you know she's gonna die, you know that she's not gonna see the end of the war, you know the only person that survives is her dad. So, I mean, they write this scene very, very badly. And, alright, one thing I noticed is when she runs from the crowd just to get her diary, that didn't happen in history, but she runs from the crowd to get her diary, and this Gestapo officer shoots her in the leg. Why would they shoot her in the leg? I'm pretty sure that if one of them was running away from the crowd, they would shoot her in the head and just kill her. I mean, I'm not trying to be cruel here, I'm just telling what I really think would happen. So that feels unrealistic to me. The story keeps going. Goku comes back, even though in the first chapter he said they couldn't be together because he was already married, which is true. If you've seen Dragon Ball, technically he has promised his heart to, I think her name is Chi-Chi. I haven't seen the anime in a while. But, so that really is canon, but now they're defiling canon by having Goku come back with no explanation, just coming back and being like, "Oh, I'm in love with you." And, you know, then there's some more title dropping, the story goes on, and then Goku gets, like, really out of character and gets into a tank and starts killing people. And this sentence almost made me burst out laughing when I read it out loud. It says, "After only minutes, there was nothing but a cloud of dust and corpses." And then the next sentence is, "Goku emerged from the tank's hatch, smiling now that he had done his duty." So Goku, who is supposed to be kind of a silly character, he gets into this tank. He fires off all these rounds into this big crowd of Nazis. and he fires at all these tanks. So then, by the time he's done doing that, he has killed, like, hundreds of Nazi soldiers, and he has destroyed these tanks, supposedly. And then he comes out of the tank and, like, smiles. This story, I always feel like it can't get worse, and then it does, but let's continue. So, then we have the scene where Goku confronts Hitler, and I cannot tell you how hard it was to read this scene without just laughing, but anyway. Hitler is, like, freaking insane. He actually, I'm not saying I condone anything that Hitler did, but he was an incredible leader. I mean, he rallied the German people to allow him to kill, like, so many Jews. So, I mean, he must have been a good leader. Not a moral leader, not a leader who had good morals, but he knew how to rally the people. But he is really freaking insane in this fic. And, he, like, attacks Goku, and then when it really gets crazy is when he turns into a Super Saiyan with, like, almost no explanation. And Anne Frank is just like, what's going on? Because, of course, she doesn't know what a Super Saiyan is. I mean, she's just this innocent little girl. And, Hitler's all like, I am 10 times more powerful than you. And, they call Goku and Hitler arch rivals, even though they've barely met. And Goku is only, like, fighting this guy because supposedly he's in love with Anne. But this sentence is a little special. Goku stared Hitler into the eye, then screamed, "This ... is for love," and flew up into the sky. Love is in all caps, and it has an exclamation mark. Goku, there is a lot of stuff about Goku in this fic that disappoints me, but this is the worst. He totally doesn't explain, the thing with him already being married. He just comes back and says he's in love with her. He screams every time he attacks someone. This author uses the word horror every time, a character attacks another character. They really like that word, I guess. And he becomes a super ultra power Saiyan, and then, fires his beam of doom at Hitler and disintegrates him. Wow. And then it says Goku then collapsed to the ground in a heap, exhausted from the fight. Then, without making a new paragraph, it says 2 years later, Anne and Goku had finally reached the date of their wedding. The transitions in this story are really, really bad. I mean, I think I would have been a little happier if they just had really short, like, chapters, just so their transitions would be a little less awkward, because the transitions in the story are worse than the transitions in the second Inspector Gadget movie. And, oh my gosh, those movies were awful, but that's a totally different, like, realm here, so... Yeah, but then Anne and Goku destroy, quote, the time machine, and take a boat to Australia for some reason. They change their names, and they begin to live their new lives. It's ridiculous, and, then they have, like, this 2-sentence thing where they get married, and it says that Anne is at peace, and they would always be together until the end of time. I am so offended by this fanfic. It's like, see, this is the person that was in your, like, 5th grade class when you learned about Anne Frank. The person that wrote this fanfic is that girl who was, like, really sympathetic. And then as the years went by and you studied her every year, you studied Anne Frank every year, this girl just got worse and worse. And she was just like, oh, I feel so bad for her. And finally she got to the point where she snapped and wrote this fanfic where she... I mean, I think there's a lot of author fulfillment in the story, and that basically she doesn't develop Anne's character at all. Not that she should. I'm appalled just that Anne Frank is in this story, that people write fan fiction about this girl who died. But, I mean, I really think that the author wrote this fic mostly because, Anne Frank, she was just sort of like, well, I can insert myself there. So she's sort of inserting herself, and she, like, talks constantly about how Goku has, like, a beautiful face, and how he's, like, manly and crap. This fic is so freaking awful. I have to question its legitimacy. I wonder if this is a troll fic. I'd like your opinions on that in the comments. So, if you guys think this is a troll fic, please tell me. The first time I read this was, like, a couple of years ago, and I was pretty reasonably sure that it was legitimate and that it was not a troll fic, but now I'm rethinking it. This is too ridiculous. This is too campy. The dialogue is horrible. I mean, guys, I know My Immortal's a troll fic. I know Forbidden Fruit, The Temptation of Edward Cullen is a troll fic. I've read a lot of troll fics. This is bad. It's not that bad, but it's very offensive. It's an insult to the people who died in World War II, especially the Jews who died in the concentration camps. I am horribly appalled that this story exists. Please give me your opinion in the comments. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, favorite, send a friend request. I don't mind answering your comments, so go ahead and leave one. By the way, I also always read the comments, even if I don't reply, but if you do direct a question at me that isn't incredibly rude or demeaning, then I will answer it. So don't hesitate, okay guys? Thanks for listening. PineappleRatio out.